Three, two, one, and we're back. We're going to be talking about a topic that is near and dear to everyone's heart, which is how to end your fear of rejection forever. But before we get to our first points, I want to respond to 3 or 4 of you that have direct messaged me through Instagram. And I am sorry that I'm not as punchy on my responding to Instagram as I am other sources of inboxes. But yes, Julie is considering taking on some more elite coaching clients. Some of you have been asking about that. Julie has room. I mean, frankly, Julie, how many clients would you feel comfortable taking on right now?
For the right ones that are really motivated, ready to work, maybe 4 or 5.
So why are we taking on more coaching clients? Because coaching clients are what keep Julie and I frosty. In other words, if we didn't have coaching clients in different markets around the country, and frankly, we're getting a lot in different parts of the world, we're not going to be very good at doing this podcast. I mean, that's just the truth.
True.
This podcast is a lot of times inspired by personal coaching clients, but we learn a lot about what's happening in all these markets. And we have top agents really all over the country. And most of the agents that Julie personally coaches, they really are top agents. There are some exceptions. There's frankly some agents that come to real estate or come to Julie's schedule that are new agents, but they have previous experience selling or whatever, so they're not as, I'd say, unprepared as maybe a new agent that's never sold before, sold anything before. So really, if you're interested in being coached by Julie, here's the process. And it's not a very fancy process. There's not a lot of funnels or forms to fill out. It's just very simple. You text me directly. It's 512-758-0206. 512-758-0206. And then what you're going to do is when you text me, just give me a little bio information on yourself. Been in real estate, not been in real estate. Hopefully most of you that are interested in being coached by Julie are going to be somewhat successful, ready to take your businesses to the next level. Give me some background on you. Anything and everything is great. More personal information. It's all wonderful. And then what happens after that is then, provided that, I think you're a good fit based on what you said, then I'm going to forward you to Julie, and then you're going to interview Julie, and she's going to interview you, and together you'll decide whether or not you are a good fit for her and she is a good fit for you, to be your coach. Now, I want to warn you that Julie is very selective, and I'm also going to warn you, Julie's coaching is the most expensive coaching, mine as well, in our coaching program. For a vast majority of you that are not ready to make a true financial investment in your business, you're going to be way better off from Premier Coaching. And we talk about Premier Coaching every day on the show, so you know what we're talking about. But for those of you who are really looking for, I'd say, how many different sources have said we're the number 1 real estate coaches in America?
Tons.
A lot. But if you're looking, and I think personally, Julie's a better coach than I am. So if you're looking for who is arguably the best real estate coach in the nation, she does have a willingness and an interest in personally coaching you. Text me directly at 512-758-0206. And yeah, let's get the conversation started. And again, for those of you who are not ready for that peak experience, that's fine too. You can join Premier Coaching, and the link for Premier Coaching, and you can join Premier Coaching for free, is below in the show description and the show notes. And like always, we are using notes for our podcast, and the notes are waiting for you below. Just scroll below and you can follow along with us. And you can also use these notes for your social media, or maybe you're going to use these notes for your own coaching and training for your own team or staff or whatever. So it's all sitting there waiting for you. But for the vast majority of you, Premier Coaching is the place to start. And for the rest of you, those of you who are really, truly ready for the next level in your real estate business and probably your personal lives, we are interested in speaking with you, and just text me directly at 512-758-0206. All right, let's talk. I have a question for you guys. Are you living in fear of rejection? Now, rejection manifests itself in a whole bunch of different ways, but what we're going to be focusing on, the rejection that you might be experiencing consciously and subconsciously as it pertains to helping folks buy or sell real estate.
That's right. So ask yourself, and some of you are great at taking notes, ask yourself, are you living in fear of rejection on any level? Decide to conquer that fear once and for all. How much fuller would your life, your mind, even your bank account be if you lost that fear of rejection? What are you avoiding by allowing your fear of rejection to thrive? So in today's show, we're going to discuss how fear of rejection influences your behavior in negative ways, and how worrying about being rejected actually leads you to that outcome, being rejected. So, what are you avoiding? It's time to be introspective. Write down your answers.
Let's hover with what you just said,
Yes,
right?
go ahead.
The old saying is, wherever you are avoiding the most is where your growth needs to be.
Yep.
And everyone that's with rejection, honestly,
Sure.
because it's fascinating. Whatever you fear the most, you have a tendency to manifest the most frequently in your life. For example, if you're fearful of manifesting rejection, let's just say, I will never have a conversation about, buying or selling real estate because, and you're going to rattle off all the reasons. I don't want people to see me as a salesperson.
I seem desperate.
Exactly. All these excuses that you give yourself why you're just going to do, whatever it is, passive, centers of influence in past client marketing, social media, all the people that are attracted primarily to those passive sources of business, really, if you root out why you're attracted to it, it's because you fear rejection. Now, there are places in your real estate business for those types of lead generation methods. But at the end of the day, be honest with yourself. The reason that you're so attracted to making a bunch of videos, hoping and praying that the world beats a long line of real estate clients to your door, is because you fear rejection, and you're believing that if you cast enough and have enough bait out there, you're going to catch enough fish and you're going to get fed. The world doesn't really work that way. And some of you are going to discover the hard way that, again, there are places for centers of influence in past client marketing, and certainly for social media and marketing and advertising in general. But if you lead with that, you're going to go broke, because those things, if they work at all, take forever to actually generate meaningful amounts of business. So we want you to be a proactive lead generator, which does take you having direct conversations with folks, which could result in, guess what, rejection. So if you're willing to actually kind of follow that whole arc with me, like I just laid it out for you, and you're willing to say, yes, that is my biggest fear. I don't want people to, say no to me. Here's what you're actually manifesting. You're actually manifesting the no. So if you're refusing to have that direct conversation with, say, for example, that for sale by owner, because you don't know what to say and don't know how to say it, you're not being rejected directly by the seller, but the outcome of not willing to have that conversation is what? You not getting the listing, you not helping that person, and you not making money. You see? So you're trying to avoid being rejected because you don't want to have your feelings and your ego hurt, which would result in what? Your egos and your feelings being hurt, but also you not making money. So you don't even try in the first place, which results in what? Not making money. So whatever you're trying to avoid rejection by not asking questions that might result in you hearing the word no. And that then automatically locks in that you're not going to win. You guys understand conceptually what I'm saying?
Fast forwarded the rejection.
Right.
You were trying to skip the feeling of it. And in fact, you got the same result as had you powered through. And because you didn't deal with it, you didn't hear enough no's to hear the yes, you're actually pushing that even forward more and manifesting this problem over and over and over.
I mean, as a fun experiment, write down all the things in your real estate business that you're avoiding doing, or as we often do when we're doing this live, write down a list of all the things that there's no way in hell you'll ever do in your real estate business. No, if we were doing it live, that's a question we love to ask. And it's so funny. Write them down. Write down 3 things in your business you will never, ever do no matter what.
Some of you guys will fill a page.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's the reason we say 3 things, right?
That's right.
And then we have people, stand up and say what those 3 things are. It's always the same damn 3 things. Your guy's going to avoid anything that even remotely resembles anything that might result in being rejected. In other words, direct conversations with people that don't know, in other words, strangers, about buying or selling real estate. Many of you will never do that. Well, guess what? You're not doing it. Why? Because you don't know what to say. You don't know how to say it. You don't actually have the skills necessary to have meaningful, intentional conversations that will result in them saying yes to you. But if you did, here's what is the benefit. Obviously, you'd make more money. Obviously, you'd help more people. But you're also going to have that actual thing the thing that all of you want to have so much, you are going to have an unbelievable competitive advantage in the marketplace. Because all your competitors are going to be living in fear of rejection, and you're going to have pushed past it because you know what to say and how to say it. You guys get it? So the very thing that you're trying to avoid the most in your business is having those direct conversations that might result in you hearing no. That is on the other side of moving past that is where everything you want in your real estate business, and dare I say your personal life, is waiting for you.
That's right. You have to hear no before you can hear yes. So write down, here are some ways that this manifests. What are you avoiding? Now, most of you, it's not going to be all of this list, but these are the top ones that came to mind. Anything to do with proactive lead generation. Do you avoid talking about real estate with anybody you don't already know? Some of you avoid talking about real estate with people you do already know. Lead follow-up. Do you try once and then convince yourself that your prospect must not be motivated or that they just didn't like you? Do you avoid closing because you don't want to maybe hear no? Some of you are great at presenting, you're great at pre-qualifying, you're even great at generating the lead, but you fall down with the asking of the business because you're afraid of hearing no or the rejection. What about being in your higher average sale price? Are you afraid that you'll be rejected because you're out of your comfort zone? Are you afraid of becoming a powerful listing agent because you'll have to be accountable to those sellers and you might feel rejection? And the list goes on from there, but those are the top ones. Is there anything you'd add to that?
I was just, for some reason, I had this vision of somebody listening to us on their way to Orange Theory, and they know they're going to be sitting outside, and basically it amounts to the waiting room where you're kind of forced interaction with the other clients that are also waiting for the class to start. And how many of you that are listening that have never actually had a conversation with anybody around you about real estate, and now you're being confronted with the fact that you're not having those conversations because your mind is full of all these rejection type thoughts. What are they going to think of me if I talk about real estate? What if they ask me a question and I don't know the answer? What are they just going to think I'm just at Orange Theory to, basically, comb everyone for real estate leads? All these crazy thoughts that are pushing you further and further away from essentially what's going to make you the happiest in life, which is servicing other people. And how do you defeat all of that? It's basically skill set. That's it. Knowing what to say and how to say it. I should tell them though, you will always, always have fear of rejection. Always. You're always going to feel that way.
It's human nature.
It's never going to go away. But what will essentially make it so that the jagged tooth of the fear of rejection doesn't cut you is that you're going to be confident from your skill set because you're going to know what to say and how to say it. In other words, you're going to know that even in the toughest of situations with the grumpiest of persons, you're going to be 100% able to handle that situation because you're going to know what to say and how to say it. Now, will you still get rejected and will the rejection still hurt? It will, but it only hurts for a microsecond because you know exactly what to do and exactly what to say. That comes from training and you can't shortcut that.
That's right. And that comes largely from scripts. One of my favorite scripts that we teach in coaching is what do you do, assuming that you put yourself in the situation where somebody's going to ask you something you have no idea how to answer. That's a great question, Tim. I'm so glad that you asked. I'm going to write it down. Tell me your question and I'm going to write it down. I'll get you an answer by this evening. What's the best way to reach you this evening with an answer? You see, you don't have to know all of the answers to everything all the time. That's actually an expression of ego that you think you're supposed to. And in fact, if you BS your answer or worse, don't even ask the question in the first place, you're going to go back into that state of rejection and not earning the living that you need to.
You guys get what she just said? So what you just need to have is basically a
strategy.
Strategies. That's all scripts are. That's all essentially skill is. It's strategies, knowing what to say and how to say it. And then you're going to realize that oftentimes what manifests itself, especially from the mouth of a seller or even a buyer, which resembles rejection, is really just their fear. And if you can acknowledge that's really what it is, it's their fear of the unknown. It's their fear of their situation. And you don't internalize that as you being personally rejected. Like when you get around to calling it expired, this is something we tell coaching clients they don't believe until they've experienced it. The grouchiest expireds are always the ones that are the most motivated.
Yep.
Otherwise, they wouldn't be wasting the emotional bandwidth on being grouchy if they weren't actually motivated to sell the house.
Right. Why would they care otherwise? Why would they have any emotion if they don't have to sell?
Exactly. When you call an expired or for sale by owner and they're like super friendly and they don't even care.
A social expired.
That is not a very motivated seller. But if you call a seller and they're like, grouch, that's somebody who's under stress and you're there to solve their problem. But how do you interpret it as an unsophisticated, low-skilled salesperson? You internalize that as personal rejection. You guys hopefully putting the mental thoughts together.
And then you don't make that next phone call. You declare expireds not to, it doesn't work for you. They're all grumpy, blah, blah, blah. You're missing the point. I think of a coaching client told me this once when we were working on this. She said, I have solved my issue with rejection. She said, I'm going to go into it and I'm going to tell a story here in a second. She's going to go full speed ahead into it. And I said, tell me, your mindset seems to have changed. She said, here's what I tell myself before I get on the phone, before I do lead follow-up, before I'm proactive. She said, I close my eyes and I say, zip, zip. I'm pulling on my protective suit and all things will bounce off of me today. Nothing is going to get in my way. And I thought, if that works for her, that's awesome. I had another coaching client that she sang a song. She said, no, yes. And she said that before she put herself in a situation where she might hear no, because she's reminding herself she had to hear enough no to both build up the tough skin that it doesn't really bother her as much anymore and power through. So that brings me to a story that I came across not having to do with real estate, but having to do with rejection, okay? So the story goes that there's this guy named Ji Zhang who boldly adventures into a territory that so many of you fear, rejection. By seeking out rejection, this was a game that he created. He seeked out on purpose, hearing no. He wanted to hear rejection constantly to power through this for 100 days, from asking a stranger to borrow $100 to requesting a burger refill at a restaurant. Zhang desensitized himself to the pain and shame that rejection was bringing him and discovered that simply asking for what you want can open up possibilities where you expect to find dead ends. Now, what did he discover? I just jotted down a few notes. We don't have to do all of these. First of all, he discovered that why was he holding on to this? It was something that had happened in his childhood that had haunted him into adulthood. Rejection at age 6 was following him around for years. So he decided to create 100 days of rejection to deep dive into that challenge.
Well, he desensitized himself to it. Yeah. But I'm going to caution everyone on this one. I'm sorry for interrupting your story.
Okay. You're good.
But don't worry about why you feel the way you feel.
Yeah, don't create, you don't have to have a story. I tell coaching clients all that time. You are not going to have something that is your issue, your story, your hang up. You have had that long enough. You've got to step away from that. That's not the thing to concentrate on.
Right. The whole idea that you're going to figure out whatever happened to you when you were a little kid and somehow that's adversely affecting you may be true, might not be true, but all it is now is an excuse for you.
Water under the bridge.
It's not. It's your excuse from not getting over your fear of rejection. But all of us have these little, emotional quagmires that kind of, manifest occasionally in different forms in life. That shouldn't be the determinant as to whether or not you're going to help somebody and whether you're going to live your life to the fullest. Really, at the end of the day, the cautionary tale here is do not look in the rearview mirror for the direction you should be going when you're looking forward.
That's right. So the next thing he learned was, and this should sound a lot like real estate, it wasn't really the initial rejection. It was the fact that he had no plan, no presentation, and a fear of closing. Sounds a lot like real estate. Consider the fact that winging it all the time keeps you on the path of rejection because the definition of close is the logical ending to a great presentation. So of course you would avoid close, live in fear of it, live in fear of rejection if you don't have a great presentation. It's impossible to close on something that you've never presented. So if you're not using scripts and presentations, it makes sense that you would be in fear of rejection or objections, but it's easily curable in Premier Coaching. None of it is hard. All a script or a presentation is a series of logical questions that get the story from your prospect out so that you can then logically close them.
I do think we should interject. There's no amount of coaching and training in the world that's going to be as effective at helping you get past your fear of rejection more than actually being rejected.
Yeah, it's like rejection boot camp. That's why I liked this story.
Well, yeah, exactly. But, again, this is something we say in live events, so you guys are going to have to bear with me with what I'm about to say. So rejection really is one of the primary determinants, your ability to move past it, of whether you're going to be successful in anything in life. Look for it in your little kids, your children too, guys. If they don't bounce back really quick, don't try to, Dr. Freud them. Just give them a system where they can move past it. But again, this is something we say at live events because it gets a reaction, but also it really gets to the heart of it. We hope that when you start actually doing proactive lead generation, that you have the worst experience ever with rejection, like on your first phone call. We hope you trip over and call the most, psychotic nut job seller you could ever possibly imagine, and they just spit nails and everything else you can possibly imagine at you. Just lambaste you. All your fears are manifesting on this one call because what's going to happen, or even worse, you went to their door. Because what's going to happen is you'll have had this horrible experience, and then you're going to walk away, and you're going to maybe realize that you're still standing tall, you're still alive, and the psychological scars or the psychological effect is all that's there. That in essence, it was just your ego and your fear of rejection that's basically, making you feel like you lost. But then you're going to quickly then come to the realization that you can actually choose not to feel that way. You can turn off that fear of rejection. That Julie was giving you some insight on how to do that with, the song and all the rest of it. But you can choose how you can't choose the experiences you're going to have necessarily, but you can choose how you're going to react to them. You can choose whether or not you want that person and that rejection you just experienced to, move past your outer crust. I'm now thinking of what was that series of with dragons and whatnot with a super tall wall?
Yeah, you mean Game of Thrones?
Game of Thrones, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you need to build a super tall wall
with a moat.
With a moat, exactly, with dragons protecting it. And if someone throws some rejection at you occasionally, maybe you're going to feel a little bit like an arrow hitting your wall, that level of, feeling. But beyond that, you're good. You can handle it. And that only comes from experience. Now, you do have to build your wall first, and you do have to have your dragons, and that's what coaching and training is. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, the experience of actually having direct interaction with people is going to validate that your skill set is really, truly there. It is the armor that you're going to always have there to protect you. When you put those pieces together, you have that unfair advantage in the marketplace. And guess what? Interest rates don't matter. Market conditions don't matter. All the things that other people worry about, all the external things that people think control their lives don't matter, because you can make money wherever the hell you want to. I remember I was having a call, Dan Grebe. And I remember Dan was, he's a very successful agent, and he's with Keller Williams, blah, blah, blah. Great guy. And Dan used to actually have me coach him twice a week. And Dan was great because he's always willing. He always took action, everything I said, from one call to the next, right? There are no delays.
Coachable.
But we had a call once because he was having, he didn't come from money. He didn't have any sort of financial, neither did I, but I had to work through this at an earlier age. Sure. And fortunately for him, I'd already done it. So I could help him do the same thing. Here's the thought I shared with him. Dan, you will never be poor. Why is that? Because you have the skill set to always help people make money, because he knew how to be a proactive lead generator. And he thought about that. I said, Dan, anytime you're in any market condition, he sells in Orlando, you will always be able to generate listing leads. You will always be able to generate, just by using your skill set, you'll always be able to generate cash flow. Why would you ever be worried? Why would you ever worry about ever being without? Because you can always basically tap that skill set that you've developed. And that was an incredibly liberating thought for him. And it wasn't right after that call, but it was, probably in the months that preceded it. His business took off because when he ran up against somebody that was a fire-breathing monster, he just reminded himself, I assume this is how he worked through it psychologically. He told me this in essence, was that he knew he'd never be poor because he knew he had the skill set to push past any level of rejection. And no matter how jerky that particular person was going to be to him, he didn't care. Next.
Well, that's the thing. So let me make an important distinction here. We're not talking about his ability to talk somebody who says no magically into saying yes.
Right.
You can't motivate the unmotivated. What you're talking about is it didn't bother him to hear no because he knew he was that much closer to the next call or the call after that being yes.
No's are just part of the deal.
That's right. But you do have to build up your resistance. So back to our story just for a second. One of the other things that he learned from proactively going after rejection on purpose was he learned not to quit, not to give up. He developed what we call stick-to-itiveness, the intuition that you must stick to it to succeed, like Dan. The average close in a sales situation occurs after asking 5 to 8 times. But when do you throw in the towel? This is one of the most common mistakes I hear amongst agents. They assume that asking once, if they get a no that first time or no, I'm not ready yet, depending on the situation, obviously, that, they should just give up then. Instead of following up until you've asked enough good questions to determine, is it really no, not now? Or is it just, I need your help to figure out how to get to a yes? Don't give up.
Now, I'm going to tell you guys a little secret that shouldn't be that big of a secret. You will not actually hear straight up no, hardly ever in real estate when you're when you pre-qualified, when you're following our listing presentation, sending the pre-listing pack. This is on the listing side, something similar on the buyer side. You will hardly ever just get flat up no. You might get basically a fear-based response where someone hits you with really an objection that you just need to help move past. They're unclear about some procedural aspect, but you're really very rarely going to just hear no. You might I remember back like FSBOs, right? They might just say, I'm not going to list with an agent. I'm not going to Well, guess what? There's a skills-based approach to help that seller move past their fear of listing with an agent and getting ripped off.
Using a script.
Because that's the essence of where their reaction is coming from. Mr. Seller, listen. I appreciate the fact that you can sell this house yourself. And you know what? I think you can. Maybe I shouldn't tell you that as a real estate agent. And I'll tell you something else. If I were in your situation, I didn't have a real estate license and I had a great property like yours, maybe I shouldn't say this. I might get voted off the island for saying this. but I might try to list my own home myself, just like you are, for sale by owner. Okay, validate, make the seller say
and you
good.
just removed the possibility of conflict, didn't you?
Right. And Mr. Seller, I'll tell you what's even more. I think you priced it right. The condition is great. I do think you could sell this house yourself. You might be surprised to hear me say that, but that's my opinion. And the seller is going to be like, what? Then you say, but Mr. Seller, let me ask you a real quick question. If I were to bring a buyer that wanted to purchase your house, and this buyer had no issues with financing, no issues with appraisal, no issues with anything, this buyer was perfect. This buyer was willing to work around your closing schedule. This buyer loved the house, loved the improvements made to your house. In other words, this is the buyer you're hoping to find. And the check I hand you at closing is the same, if not considerably more, than you'd be able to get selling the house yourself. In other words, you can have your cake and eat it too, Mr. Seller. Why wouldn't you list the house with me? Now, I didn't deliver it perfectly because I haven't said that in a while, but it is a script in our Premier Coaching Program, a version of it. Again, I didn't say it perfectly, but here's what you're going to hear when you say that to a seller. And remember, this is a seller, I'm going to sell it myself. I don't want to pay a real estate commission, right? Mm-hmm. Now you've moved past that, and here's what the seller is going to say. If you can show me you can do all of that, then I would list the house with you. They'll say a version of that. And by the way, our listing presentation will essentially overcome that and help them understand how you can sell it for more. Then you can say, of course you would, Mr. Seller. So once this property sells, once your home sells, where are you going next? And now you can slide right into pre-qualifying them, and you can find out exactly what their motivation is. And then once you have their motivation, listeners, once they've given you a soft yes that they'd list the house, and once they basically let you know what their time frame is, well, we're moving to Florida. Florida, wow, that's exciting. So ideally, how soon do you need to be there? Well, I want to be there in the next 6 months. 6 months? Well, that's great. Do you guys have a house down there yet? Have you decided where you're going to move? And then you're going to get into more of the pre-qualifying. Mm-hmm. Once you pre-qualified the seller for motivation, you have got essentially all the big rocks of discovering why that seller is going to sell solved. You know what it's going to take to get that home listed. And at that point, it's your game to lose. Then you follow the rest of our process. You see how we just took a fire-breathing no to a probably yes, and now you know why they're selling. Now, obviously, it could have gone different ways. Well, if I can get my price, then maybe I'll sell the house, and you might determine that seller has no motivation. They're unrealistic on price, condition, location, or all the above. And maybe in that particular case, you don't want to list the house. But it's going to take having those conversations versus what? You waiting around for the phone to ring? You waiting around for some, funnel to actually, puke out some lead that's actually going to be transactable? You waiting around to buy some lead that you're going to pay a 35% referral fee? Look, you can do all of those things. And if you are getting started in the business, or if you're struggling with cash flow, do all the above. But for those of you who really want to have a long-term, sustainable, very profitable real estate business, you've got to master the art and science of being a proactive lead generator. And in doing so, you will get past your fear of hearing no.
Okay, so let me do a little coaching translation, because you gave them a whole lot of great things there at once. Fantastic script. So first thing is, you broke through the picking up the phone in the first place. Okay, you made yourself do the proactive lead generation, or you wouldn't have had the conversation.
Or you went to the door.
Either one, you're being proactive. You've decided to generate your own leads. That's the first thing. Second thing is, you ran into the fiery, burning, person that everybody lives in fear of. Oh, I'm going to feel rejected. I'm going to have my feelings hurt. Oh no, this is going to be awful. And you didn't really care. It didn't even resonate with you, really.
I expected them.
You expected it.
Right.
So it didn't hit you in the face, right? It was fine. It was normal. You've heard it before. You're going to power through. You didn't let it cause you to say, okay, and hang up.
I expected them to be agent haters.
Agent haters. It's so much better going into it that way, expecting that, right? I always think of in my mind, to me, it's exactly the same as when you've been through a flight where you had real turbulence, like it was bad turbulence, and you think, oh, well, I made it through that. And then the next flight where it's just a little bit of turbulence is no big deal. And you think back to that previous flight. Well, if I got through that, it's fine. You go through enough rejection and you power through and you get the results that you're looking for. Every time it gets easier. It doesn't even resonate with you anymore.
What ultimately does a seller want? The least amount of hassle, the shortest period of time, and the most amount of money, right?
All of them.
All of them. And if the seller knows that you can deliver that with a high level of confidence, they might start out as presenting as agent haters, but they're going to become your best clients ever. And I'm going to tell you guys a true story. Julie and I, as you guys maybe know or didn't know, we sold over 100 homes our first year in the business, and guess where all the business came from? No, we did not list a subdivision. No, we did not come from a family in real estate. We did it one proactive lead. And by the way, there weren't that many. You couldn't buy leads then. Yeah, I mean, so you had to do the proactive lead generation if you wanted to survive. Well, we sold 103 homes our first year, and for the next 10 years after that, sold between 100 and 200 homes. The best sellers, every single time, the ones that sent us the most business and the most loyal, were every single time the biggest jackasses when we started doing work with them. Because remember, we got all of our business from being proactive lead generators, so we had to work with a lot of for sale by owners and expireds. And we learned after really 6 or 7 months in real estate that when we contacted them for the first time, if they were the most, like I would say, meanest to us,
aggressive,
they were always the most motivated. I mentioned this a second ago, but it's so true. And those people to this day, and Julie and I don't live in Ohio anymore, to this day, still seek us out to ask us real estate advice. And we just recently referred one of the clients we sold a house to the first year, though those people were really nice, to someone in our EXP group, to do a real estate, list the property for them. But though it's so funny, it's so counterintuitive that, everything you want in life, guys, at the end of the day, is on the other side of realizing your highest and truest purpose on this planet is not trying to avoid fear, not trying to live in this tiny little bubble of a life, but seeking out on a regular basis how you can be service to other people. And the more people you help accomplish their goals, the more of everything else you're going to want in your life. You guys are looking how to, you want to look successful, you want to be successful, you want to have the, rewards that come along with from being successful. It comes from helping people. If you don't have everything you want in life, I'm talking everything you want in life, and let's just focus on materialistic stuff. If you're not living in the house you want to have, the cars you want to drive, you're not vacationing, or you're not eating the food you want, the shoes on everything. It's simply because you have not realized that success is very easy to accomplish once you start with the dominant thought that I'm here to be of service to other people. Now, if you don't realize that that is your highest and truest purpose, fear is going to kick your ass every single time because it's going to be the weight that holds you down. It's going to be the rope that keeps you to the dock. The fear of being rejected. Now, you can cut that line by realizing and saying it to yourself and meaning it. Now, you might not mean it now, but you will mean it over time. I am here to be of service to you. How can I be of service to you? And even if the person, breathes rejection breath back at you, that's okay. You expected it. You know what to say. You know how to say it. Is all this helping you guys realize that you're surrounded by an incredible opportunity if you just move past your fear?
That's right. And in fact, you just touched on it. You should you should really beg to hear objections. Because when you hear objections, what is an objection? It's an unanswered question in the mind of your prospect. They are engaging with you. Hearing objections is fantastic. They didn't hang up on you. They didn't, blow you off. They are engaging you. The best thing you can hear is objections. The next best thing is knowing how to handle those objections and then move on, because that's showing that you're being of service. Why does an expired end up being a very loyal client? Because you solved their problem. There's not a seller on the planet who ever expected to be an expired listing.
Now, not all the prospecting sources we teach you guys to chase. And by the way, we do want all of you to tune your frequency to becoming a high impact, high volume listing agent. But not all the things that we're prescribing to you and we teach you in Premier Coaching is going to result in a higher probability of being rejected. A lot of the stuff we teach you guys has basically no rejection.
Yeah, we just use FSBOs and expireds because they're the obvious thing that you guys avoid, but also an obvious lead source because they have their hand in there. They have a house to sell.
Probate, there's all kinds of different things we teach you. There's 30 different, exactly. You're not going to get any rejection, most of the things, but just again, we know that most of you are always going to avoid anything that resembles the type of work that might result in you hearing no. What we're trying to do is convince you to move past that, because once you move past that, you're going to make so much more money helping so many more people. And even the things that we coach you guys how to do that do result in less rejection, you're going to even be more effective at those things as well. It's confidence, guys. You can't fake it. I don't care how much marketing and branding you do and how much you're trying to convince the world that you're successful, and then hopefully the success will follow. The success it's a Charlie Munger quote, right? Charlie said, don't try to make you famous. Try to make the results you get or your work famous that you've done for other people. In other words, the results will speak for themselves. Isn't that ultimately what you want? Of course it is.
Well, so the exciting thing is in Premier Coaching, when you get those yeses and you are successful as a problem solver, That then opens the door for you to do a whole bunch of other things like getting testimonials from those specific types of clients.
Yep.
So that you then can put those in your pre-listing package that we teach you how to do. And then you use those as lead follow-up, social media. One thing leads to the next, but it all comes back to you powering through, being more proactive. Stop living in fear of rejection. You know, it is true that the previous market for many years was easier. It was.
It bred complacent agents.
But that's the problem. That was the bad byproduct.
But not just real estate agents, really. It made everything seem easier, honestly.
Exactly.
Everybody, every industry, everywhere was surrounded by abundance because guess what? There was abundance everywhere because interest rates were nothing. And post-COVID...
And that normalized for a while.
Well, and then, all this money pumped in from COVID. Everybody had an excessive amounts of money that they were fighting to spend somewhere, right?
Right. That's true.
I mean, it's crazy.
And so we feel your pain that this may be the first time you've experienced a more challenging market. That's normal. But you can't normalize waiting and hoping that everything just flips back to being fear of missing out and everything's easy deals, low interest rates, la, la, la. That's not going to happen. You can't expect that to happen. The agents that not just survive, but thrive moving forward are the ones that upgrade their skills, don't live in fear of rejection, go after the business, whichever spoke in the wheel that you're going after that we teach you in Premier Coaching. You've got to power forward and be the leader, be the problem solver, because those clients really are super loyal and great givers of repeat and referral business.
So I asked you the question that we started out at the top of today's show, listeners, and there's probably going to be 15 or 20,000 of you that listen to the show within the first 24 hours. So I have a question for you. And you guys can put this in the comments if you're over on YouTube too. It'll be kind of fun. I'm asking you now, what are the 3 things that you're avoiding the most in your real estate business? What were they at the top of today's podcast and what are they now? Right. You're now discovering what you're avoiding is the thing that's going to increase the likelihood of being rejected. But if you no longer lived in fear of rejection, if you knew what to say and how to say it, you're still going to get the rejection occasionally, but it's not going to like cut you to the wick.
Paralyze you.
It's going to paralyze. You're going to be like, I was expecting that. This is what you do. This is how you say it. This is the solution for that particular problem. Are you still going to avoid those things? This is a skills-based approach. Now, here's a really advanced thought. If you did not fear those 3 things anymore, I'm not going to ever say that you're going to want to prospect. I'm not going to say you're going to love, getting rejected. That'll never happen. But if you no longer lived in fear and those three things were things that you knew you had to do every single day, how much more of everything in life would you be enjoying right now? It is extraordinary that the very things that we avoid the most are where our growth needs to be. You guys get it? I bet you do. Now here's your homework. You have 1 or 2 paths. Vast majority of you, join Premier Coaching if you haven't done so already. Scroll down, join the link, click the link. You can join for free. That is the path for 99% of you. For those of you who are elite, those of you who are already basically looking for a big challenge, wanting to really take your game to the next level, Julie is formally applying for the job of being your personal coaching client. She's only going to take on a handful of clients, and you need to text me directly at 512-758-0206. And like I said before, just give me a little brief bio information on yourself. And let's get the conversation started. 3 to 5 coaching clients. That's what she's interested in coaching. So do text me directly at 512-758-0206. Thank you for keeping this the number 1 listened to daily podcast for real estate professionals in at least the United States. Do please give us a 5-star review on iTunes. Just scroll down, just give us a 5-star review and let the world know why you love this podcast. Guys, this is what we do. This is, everyone is here to be a service to other people. That is where we are going to find the most fulfillment, the most sustainable happiness and level of really purpose. The people we serve are all of you. That you guys are our mission. Our job is to make your lives better. Let us know we're doing so by giving us a 5-star review on iTunes and a little comment about why the show means so much to you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for keeping this number 1 listen to daily podcast for real estate professionals in at least the United States. Have a fantastic day. We'll talk with you on the show tomorrow.